Hey Warriors, we're here to talk about advisory. Now, whether you've been here for 4 years or this is your first time that you'll go through advisory with us, either way, I need you to pay attention because there have been some updates, some changes, and things you need to pay special attention to throughout our presentation as we talk about how advisory is going to look for us as a Memorial Warrior. Okay, guys, right off the bat, this is a slide you're going to see several times. The reason for that is just like those annoying jingles you hear on the radio or maybe even on TV. They're designed so that you hear it enough or you see it enough and it sticks in your memory and you're aware of it. You need to be very aware of this slide and the message that it gives. One, as students, you should be responsible, check your email, be aware of what's going on, be aware of teachers and administrators who are trying to communicate with you, other staff members, and let you know what's going on. Mandatory tutorials should be something that you regularly expect your teachers will sign you up for. If a teacher signs you up for mandatory tutorials, it is just that. It's mandatory. It's not optional. It's not when you feel like it. It's not if you want to go. You're required to be there. So there will be consequences for any lack of attendance to your mandatory tutorials. So please make sure you're there for those sessions. If you're ever signed up, you should expect face-to-face communication from your teacher. They should talk to you about it, help you understand why you're coming to advisory. Face-to-face, in person as one step. Another step will be automated emails. Automated emails will be sent to your school email address to help you understand where to be, what classroom, what day, all those kinds of things. There will be no good reason as to why you won't know where to go for advisory as long as you're being responsible and taking care of your business and doing your part. Please be at every advisory session where you were signed up for mandatory tutorials. So you'll see the slide again as a reminder, but mandatory tutorials, easier for me to say, are the most important part of advisory. Make sure you know if and where you're signed up and report to that location. All right, let's talk about some basics. First and foremost, this 30 minutes in the middle of the school day can be huge for you in a positive way if you take advantage of it. There are several more reasons than what's listed here about the advantages of why being in the classroom is what's best for you during advisory. But here's a couple things in that. You can finish your homework during the middle of the day. You can work together in a group project. All your group members are going to be there and be in one place. You're not having to try and figure out a common night or evening or weekend to be together. So that's a good reason. Getting support from a teacher who knows the content best. Advisory is a great time in the middle of the day, even if you aren't signed up for mandatory tutorials, to go in on your own, seek help, seek support, ask questions, and back to the first point here, just take care of that work and knock that work out while you're on campus here at Memorial. You can get personalized instruction during that time. So many benefits and positive things from you going to classrooms during advisory. As promised, here's this slide again. This time when you see the slide, again, check your email. Mandatory tutorials is more important than, is greater than, it trumps everything else. But I also want you to get in your head an idea of a student advisory score. Each of you as Memorial students are going to have an advisory score, and that advisory score is unique to advisory. So we'll talk more about that in detail in the future. What you need to remember is what this slide says. Mandatory tutorials, most important. If a teacher signs you up, it is required. Please go there, be there, and don't miss that. Also, the number one place that you should choose and can choose to be in is a classroom. To extend learning, to improve where you're at, to get better. That's why we're here to begin with. But with all that said, be ready for future conversations and communication about what a student advisory score is. More on that shortly. Take a second to look at this slide and pay attention to what we're seeing. On the right side here, we see a visual map of the school. This outlines what you see in red as classrooms. There are areas that are highlighted in black, and this just means that they're off limits. The auditorium, gyms, for the most part during advisory, those are things we'll use for special class meetings or special sessions maybe throughout the year, but not just open spots during advisory. So the map layout gives you an idea of two main categories, red and green. Red classroom areas. Green areas are areas that you can choose with a specific advisory score. So now it's time to start talking about an advisory score and what that means. Before we do, one more reference. Top left corner over here in the top left. Teacher assigned mandatory tutorials trump every advisory score. If you are signed up for mandatory tutorials, advisory scores aren't relevant. Locations really aren't that important. You need to go to where you're signed up. Now, with that said, student advisory scores, this is going to show the ranges and rankings first, more on how those numbers exist later. If you have a score of 80 or above, you're going to be allowed, if not signed up for mandatory tutorials, to choose a spot in the building. You can see from the map, it's down the center of the building. That's the library, the courtyard, the open area that's outdoors in the middle, and then the cafeteria in the back of the building. Those areas are green areas as it is by this map. And what that means is you have an advisory score of 80 or higher than that. So we'll talk about that more in detail and how those scores are earned. If you have less than that or lower than that, a 79 score or lower, you're going to be required to go to a classroom. When you choose a classroom that you are not signed up for automatically, you should choose a class that's on your schedule. You should not choose your favorite teacher you had 2 years ago and overcrowd a classroom. You need to go to a teacher in a classroom that's on your schedule and use that time to improve, get better as a student, ask questions, turn in quality work, things like that. If you're really paying attention to the map, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, that's our lecture hall. There is an advisory detention area, and that would be if your score dropped really low because of behavior issues, things like that. That means that you would be expected to report to the detention area or the lecture hall automatically each day based on what your advisory score is. If you have questions about what is this score, how do I get this score, more on that in the future slides to come. Now that we've seen a visual of the map of the building and you have an idea what red and green areas might be, red being classrooms, green being choice areas, advisory score of an 80 or higher, just be aware of these things for advisory. If you're in a classroom, you can use the restroom and use the restroom pass system as we do throughout the school day, but don't take advantage of that time. Especially if you're assigned mandatory tutorials, you might not get credit for that, for being there and being present if you spend 10 minutes in the restroom. So if it's advisory time and you have to use the restroom, only students who are in classrooms can use restrooms. If you're in a green area, if you're in a library, courtyard, or cafeteria, you're going to stay in that area and not use the restroom during that time. And then, spoiler alert, just kind of something to keep in your head, we'll eventually have Gold Club members from our advisory scores here, and those people might one day have special access to common areas and things like that. But for the most part, common areas off limits. Only students that have restroom breaks during advisory will be the students who are in classrooms. Okay, really lock into this slide. A lot of good information on this slide. This tells you that at the beginning of the year, on the first day of school, every student started with a score of 100. So for an advisory score, you all had and started with a 100. Scores also reset every quarter or at the end of every 9 weeks, and then every student will reset back to a 100. So your starting point is 100 points. Your score can be added to or taken away from. You can have a score above 100. So you could have a score that reaches up to 325, and that would be amazing. Talked about Gold Club members as trying to reach 150 points. You would do that by your base score of 100 being added to off reinforcements. You see serve passes being issued. Serve passes are going to be electronic this year versus the paper version. There could be just academic growth that you show in class, positive behavior when a sub is in class. All those things are good things that staff members, that teachers could add to your advisory score. Refinement negative areas are things that we all know that we shouldn't be doing. Personal communication violations, you have your cell phone out, you shouldn't do that. If you're disrespectful, defiant, not listening to teachers, not listening to staff members, if you're missing work, all the things from skill versus will, all the things from academic effort, all the things from academic even achievement, how you're doing in classes, all those things can affect positively or negatively where you're ultimately have a choice to be during advisory, because where your choice of location will stem from your advisory score, and your score is impacted positively and negatively based off of your actions and then staff members' entries into this form. Now, please don't beg or ask staff members to do one thing one way or another for points. If you want positive points, do positive things. So it's really simple and clear. And the purpose of what this is to help us track positive student behavior, to help us reward that behavior, and to help see an overall positive advisory score for each student. And this gives you a better idea of how those point values are added to and taken away from for all of us. Now that we have an idea of what a score might be, let's talk about some more specifics for each score zone. Reminder, anytime you're signed up for mandatory tutorials, that's going to take precedent over anything else. If you're signed up for a mandatory tutorial, please make sure you go there. Student scores are going to be locked in for 1 week at a time. And so you're going to receive an automated email that tells you your advisory score. That email is something you need to keep track of. Make sure it's not in your junk folder. Make sure it doesn't get deleted. You're going to need that information if you want to choose a green area and you have a score of 80 or more. So more details about that in green areas later, but pay attention to the zones here. First, Gold Club members. Gold Club for us is going to be any student that reaches 150 points or more. From the base of 100, that means you earned at least 50 positive points. That's great. And there'll be specific rewards and things and activities that can be accessed if you're a Gold Club member. So that should be a goal for all of us. But below that, you see each segment. If your score is 80 to 100, you have access to green areas, green zones. That's cafeteria, that's courtyard, that's library, and red zones, which are classrooms. Classrooms are, a top priority of where all of us should be. And if you have a score of 80 to 100, you can access any of that. If your score is 70 to 79, you would have, if we looked it up in the system, it would be a yellow score. But that yellow score is just kind of a warning idea of you'd be required and expected to be in a classroom, which is a red area. And the yellow just gives you an idea that, hey, you're close to the green, you're close to 80 or above, close to that, but you're also getting closer to the idea of where overall the color that you have and the score that you have would turn red. And whether you are yellow or red in that, whether your score is 70 to 79 or your score is 50 or below, that means that you access classrooms. Classrooms are in red. Again, choose a class that is on your schedule. Choose a class that's beneficial to you. If there are specific classes that you're struggling in, if there are specific classes you're missing work in, if there are specific classes that you're struggling in, please see those classes first. Communicate with those teachers first and make plans to go attend those classes. The middle part here for your advisory score would be a 51 to a 69. That score will usually happen, and hopefully only happen, if there are behavioral concerns that happen consistently. If there are consistent behavioral concerns and your advisory score is somewhere between 51 to 69, you'll see that reflected if we looked it up in the system as a blue number. And in that number, blue equals a lecture hall. Lecture hall is our detention area for advisory. And that just means that you would be in the lecture hall as a detention spot. You could work on classwork, do things like that. It's quietly, and you sit by yourself, those kinds of things. But during that advisory time of 12:15 to 12:45. One more time. Are you getting this slide down yet? Remember, what's more important than everything else? Mandatory tutorials. If a teacher signs you up, you need to go. If you're not signing up for tutorials, a great first choice from students would be a classroom. Get better, grow, and improve. With all that said, if you want to choose any other area, you have to be mindful of what your student score is and choose and plan accordingly. We're going to talk about some logistics now, primarily the green zones, library, courtyard, cafeteria. But I do want to mention one logistical part about classrooms. If you're choosing a classroom during advisory, first of all, good job, good for you. But second of all, the logistical part, please make sure you're at that classroom and inside that classroom by 12:15. That gives you 5 minutes for a passing period to get there. You need to make sure you're getting to your chosen location on time. And that gives you plenty of time to get in, get work done, and have a quality advisory time if you get in the classroom within that 5 expected minutes. Even though there are 3 green areas, they're all a little bit different and unique, so please pay attention. First, the library. The library is considered a green zone, which means you have to have an advisory score of 80 or above. Again, that means that you are not signed up for tutorials, you don't have anywhere else that you're required to be, and you have a choice of where you want to go for advisory. If your score is 80 or above, the first 100 students that line up in order to go to the library can get in. It shows you on this map here on the bottom left-hand side. It's at the front of the building. There's one entrance into the library from the front of the building. When you line up, only 100 students are going to be allowed in. So when you line up, students who line up orderly, kind of calmly and quietly are going to be kind of allowed in if you're in one of the front 100. If you're pushing, shoving, screaming, throwing a big fit about it, not only will you not go into the library, but we'll take you to the lecture hall for a detention area instead. So be calm, be kind. If and when you do get in the library, kind of the same thing. Have what's a responsible level of communication. Keep it quiet. Other students can get some work done. And then the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, what you see here is this is what staff members checking you into the library will look at and will see. They'll type in your student ID, and based on your student ID number, they'll be able to see your name pop up in live real time. They'll see your advisory score in live in real time. If you are not, like this student on this slide is not, if you are not a green highlighted 80 or above score, you will not be allowed to come into the library. The courtyard is the second green area we'll talk about. A few things. You can get access to the courtyard from either common space, C Hall or D Hall. When you're in a common space downstairs, C Hall or D Hall, be mindful of a couple things. One, staff members coming to check your advisory score are probably coming from second period class. So you might have to wait and line up in the common area for a minute or two while staff members get in place to check student advisory scores. Please be calm, please be patient in those times. If you are not calm, if you are not patient in those times, again, you will not be allowed in the courtyard during advisory. So be mindful of that. To enter the advisory area, you have to not be signed up for tutorials. You have to have a score of 80 or above, and again, there are 2 entry points. So you're going to provide your student ID, staff member will type it in. In the bottom right-hand corner, this is the same visual we saw for the library. They'll have instant access to see your score at the time, and if your score is not at 80 or above, you will not be allowed to go in the commons. So please know that in advance. Also, once you're in the commons, you're expected to stay calm, quiet. We're not going to run the commons. We're not going to be crazy. We're not going to bother the other classrooms. There are classrooms that have windows into the commons. You don't need to be banging on those windows and disturbing those classes and those teachers. Also, check the weather in advance, because if you choose the commons, you're going to stay in the commons till 12:45. Some days it's hot, some days it's cold, some days it might be, if it's raining or really bad weather, the commons is not going to be available. But if it is available, you need to choose and know the weather if it's going to be a good spot for you, because we're not going to come in and out of the commons based off of the weather and you got too hot or you're too cold. So please be mindful of that if you do choose the courtyard and you qualify with an advisory score of 80 or above, you're going to be expected to stay in that area until 12:45. The third and final green location we'll talk about is the cafeteria. Checking in the cafeteria is unique to every other area. It's going to be a mass check-in, and what that means is we're going to check several students kind of at the same time or very quickly. In order to do this, every student needs their own Chromebook that has power. If you're out of power, your battery's dead, or you don't have your Chromebook, you cannot come to the cafeteria. You have to have your Chromebook. It has to have power. You'll get to the cafeteria. You'll have a seat. The cafeteria is an area that you're expected to be seated the entire time of advisory at a cafeteria table. So get to the cafeteria table where you want to be. You'll have a seat. Open your Chromebook, and then open the email that was sent to you through the automated advisory score. Open up that email. The staff member is going to be looking for the most current date to make sure that it's accurate, and the score to make sure it fits the criteria of 80 a score of 80 or above. Once we check the scores and you're good to go, good to stay, please remain seated the entire time of advisory. There are no restroom breaks in the cafeteria. Just remain calm, talk at what's a respectable volume, and then make sure that you're just kind of following expected protocols and advisory during the cafeteria. It'll be an enjoyable time for everybody who's in that spot. Here it is, guys, as promised, one more time, your favorite slide. Mandatory tutorials need to be the most important thing that you don't forget. If you were signed up for tutorials, you need to attend. Get to tutorials, get there, get better. That's the entire point of what we're doing with this advisory period time. Thank you guys very much for hanging in. A lot of information in this presentation. I'd like you to use your Chromebooks and either scan this QR code with your Chromebooks or type in this URL. Either way, it's a little bit longer process for an exit ticket. This just gives a little bit of information and feedback from all of you as students. We want to hear from you individually and get an idea of your thoughts. With that said, if you need more information or to see this video again, to play through specific parts for information or questions you might have or answer questions you might have, please do so. This is a lot of information. It's important. Having these things done well, having these things done right is going to help everybody, staff, students, no matter what your interests are, no matter what you're trying to do during that time. It's going to help have a smooth advisory time for all of us and get the most out of our advisory time. Thank you guys very much. Have an awesome rest of your day.